Today's episode is all about a phrase we hear all the time: financial freedom. But what does that actually look like in real life? Because for a lot of women, especially high earning women, the goal isn't just to make more money, it's to feel in control of it, to feel confident in it, to know that the life you're building is actually leading you somewhere. Financial freedom isn't just about hitting a number. It's about the systems, the habits, and the decisions that give you options. That's exactly what we're getting into today. I'm joined by Marc Russell, founder of BetterWallet, and someone who has helped hundreds of thousands of people take control of their money, start investing, and build long-term wealth. Marc was actually on the podcast before where we talked about getting started with investing. And today we're going deeper into what financial freedom really looks like and how you can start building it from where you are right now. Marc Russell is the founder of BetterWallet, an online financial education platform that's helped over 200,000 people pay off debt, invest, and build wealth. He began his career working at a major Wall Street firm like Vanguard, where he worked as a licensed stockbroker and financial advisor. His journey started in foster care before being adopted at 13, and today he's built a community of over 350,000 people focused on financial education and generational wealth. Marc, welcome back to the show. I'm very excited to have you back on. I actually want to kick this conversation off by getting your perspective. What does financial freedom mean to you,
Mm.
and how has it maybe changed over time for you as well?
Yeah, no, definitely. And thanks for having me on again. I guess I didn't completely screw up the first time around. But yeah, financial freedom, I think, means something different for everyone, right? So I think of the pursuit of happiness and the fact that you never really get the happiness. It's more so of like how you would define it and continuing to chase it. With financial freedom, my definition of financial freedom might be different from yours. It might be different from your neighbors. It might be different from anyone. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. I think for me, it used to be, and we're talking about like our mindsets back when we first did the first recording until now. It used to be how much money can I make, right? How can I be as popular as possible? I think titles were really important. Affiliations used to be important. And I think now that I'm a little bit older, now I'm thinking through how can I make sure I have enough time to do the things I truly love to do. That's honestly why we make money, is to make sure that we can travel whenever we want. We could do whatever we need to do for kids, future kids, to give back, right? Like I just came back from a trip to New York where I got to talk to kids in Brooklyn about entrepreneurship and investing. Like that's what I love doing. That's why I feel like I'm here on this earth, is to give back, and then also just spend the time as I wish. I think money allows you to do that, but I think it's not, in my head, financial freedom. Money isn't the end goal. If I can make $10,000 per year and do all the things I want to do, then I feel like I reach my definition of financial freedom.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think, for me personally, it's almost like, yes, you need money to make those things possible, right? And when you're at this point in life where maybe you're just starting or you're just, getting your finances under control, that can be like the sole focus, and for
Hmm.
good reason, right? It almost has to
Yes.
be. But I think, as money becomes maybe a little bit more comfortable, or you kind of know how to manage it and you see what it's doing for you, it's a natural progression into how do you spend your time? Like time
Right.
freedom, location freedom, huge for me, it's similar to you. I'm curious, was there a specific moment for you where that shifted? I mean, you mentioned that it kind of started with like being a number and kind of
Mhm.
accolades, and it's transitioned. Did something specific happen, or do you think it was just like naturally over time?
I think it all stemmed from me overworking myself because, I'm someone that I could I use the analogy of like I could run on a treadmill forever because I'm just like that hard worker. And it all stems from my dad just being he worked in a warehouse, sometimes 12 to 16 hours per day. So my mindset is always like I need to constantly be working, I need to be making an income, I need to provide, right? So that's always been in my head. But naturally you start to burn out over time and you kind of stretch yourself too much. I mean, I did that when I was in corporate. Even now, as a full-time business owner, I'm continuing to like just stretch myself thin. So after some time, I said, okay, why am I doing all this? What's the end goal? And it was, hey, like let's make sure I have that time freedom to do the things that I truly want to do. So that's one part. I think the other part is, and as you kind of progress throughout your 30s, you go from like, hey, I have all this time to do whatever I want to do to like, I need to actually be thinking about future Mark. Like, like from marriage to having kids to settling down, like all that kind of stuff you start to think about. And the worst thing that I would want to do is to introduce a mini me into the world. And I don't have time for them because I'm constantly working. I'm constantly trying to make money. And as I've developed throughout my career, I've gotten really close to a few different mentors that are, they range from people who are CEOs of major companies to people who I just respect that are working, typical like, 9 to 5s. And I think the common denominator is, hey, like we want to find a way to make the money you need to make, but also give time to the people you love the most. Unfortunately, throughout my career, there's been moments where I thought people would live forever. I mean, I'm thinking of aunties. I have a father that passed. I know we kind of we relate on that. And what I would do to give back, what I would do to go back and be there with them during the moments that like they were precious, like to go back and spend more time or have my aunties like pie that she used to make every Sunday. I mean, I would give back the world. So now it's how can I make sure I'm making enough money and having systems in place so I'm not just relying on active income, also passive income, while also going and hanging out with the people that I love the most.
Yeah, I mean, that's so eloquently put. And I think maybe it just kind of happens naturally as we get older, right? Because
Hmm.
that's really where we start to experience things and, our thought process widens. And so I agree completely with that.
Hmm.
You mentioned earlier that, financial freedom can look different to everyone.
Yeah.
And I totally agree, but I'm curious to hear, in your opinion, what do most people get wrong about financial freedom? And keeping that in mind, like, can you give some examples of how it truly can look different from person to person?
Yeah. So if you're thinking about true financial freedom, again, it's not just the income and how much money is coming through the door. It's also making sure that you're having those systems in place so that money has a job. And what I mean by that is making sure that you're budgeting, making sure every single dollar is having a job, making sure that you're not falling victim to lifestyle inflation. I think that's a big factor where a lot of people spend money on things that they don't even care about because of the interest of others and showing them, hey, I have the BMW, I have this, I have that, I have the Rolex, whatever it is. But you have to really think through what makes me happy. I think that's a question that a lot of people realize and maybe think through in their 30s more so than what they did in their 20s. So I think that's a big factor in terms of vehicles or systems beyond budgeting. Making sure that again you're making the money, make sure you're putting it to work so it can make you more money, right? Can your money's money make money? So investing becomes very critical for that. Making sure that you're optimizing your 401k, your IRA. If you have kids, putting money away in the 529, the UTMA, Uniform Transfer Minors Act. Sorry, I'm like going through all the acronyms without actually explaining what they are. So just making sure your money is making money. Because again, we all like are making some sort of like active income. How can we make sure we're having passive income coming in? Because one income source is too close to having none. So I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people make is they rely so much on making the money, but it's how can you make sure you're making more money and how you're optimizing it so then you never run out of it. And then your second question, I totally forget it.
It was, can you give some examples of how financial freedom can look different from person to person?
Yeah. I think it comes back to, what makes you happy. And I remember when I was in corporate, my first job, I absolutely hated. I loved the company that I was at. I worked at Vanguard for 6 years, but I hated what I was doing because I felt like I was drinking out of a fire hose every single day and working 15 different jobs. And I had a heart to heart with myself, and I said, okay, well, I can't do this forever. I'm not going to do this for 40 years. So let me really think through how am I going to work towards a role, either one that I create or a job that I love or a company that I love that is getting me closer to that 100% I'm happy in what I'm doing. So, I started finding roles and sometimes even taking demotions to make sure that I'm finding my version of happiness. So eventually I can get to that financial freedom. And for me, financial freedom, that happiness really came down to can I be utilizing the skills that God has given me to make sure that I'm, changing the lives of others, whatever that looks like it be in finance or I don't know, like travel, whatever it might be. Can I have the time freedom where I'm not constantly just going through this mundane commute every single day? I commuted like 2 hours per day. It was
Ah,
absolutely terrible. Sometimes sitting in traffic. Anyone who's familiar with Philadelphia, 76 traffic, you understand how bad it is. So, can I have that time freedom? Can I be doing the things I truly love to do for a company that I truly believe in? And as I continue to go down that path and try to make more money and then also, work at a company and have a position that I truly love, I realized I was only able to get to about 80%. The last company I worked for, I loved. I loved the people I worked for. I loved the mission. I loved my role. And I had a very cushy role where I traveled a lot, money was good, but I still was like itching to get that additional 20%. And frankly, I just wanted to make even more money. So, eventually I got to the point where I was like, if I'm going to get that additional 20%, I have to be doing it on my own. I need to create a business. I think Busta Rhymes had a quote, and I'm trying to make sure I'm getting it right. I think he said, if you're not going to be part of the greatest, you have to be the greatest yourself. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to go and build my own business so I can do the things I want to do and work with the people that I truly want to work with. And that led to BetterWallet. And now I can work with first generational investors who just didn't learn anything about investing growing up, and teach them everything they needed to know from someone who was a licensed financial advisor and stockbroker. So as you might kind of hear and hear what I'm saying, a lot of times I think people focus on the dollars, and I think the dollars are great, and I think dollars are a byproduct of doing the right thing for the right people. But it's really thinking through what makes you happy that really defines like financial freedom. 'Cause I think people chase the titles. Like there's so many CEOs out there that are just unhappy. They're not there for their kids, they're not there for their husbands or wives, right? So I think it's really critical to have a heart to heart with yourself and say, okay, like what drives me, what makes me tick, and if I was to do anything throughout my 24 hours, what would it be? Where I
mhm.
feel as if I would be okay not even getting paid for it, even though you are, right? So you
Yeah.
have to really balance all those things.
Yeah, I think that's really important for people listening to understand. Like, if you don't really know what you want out of life, or maybe you haven't spent time thinking about like your values and the things that matter to you, it can be very easy to just chase more or chase numbers because, it's something that we can measure, right? But when you kind of look inward and really get
Mhm.
clear on those things that mean the most to you, you can start actually working towards achieving them. And I
Right.
agree with you. That's freedom in and of itself, but
Yep.
it can be financial freedom as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that makes total sense.
So, obviously, you've worked with so many different people. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on if you've noticed any patterns in people who specifically make good money, but really feel out of control with it, right? Like
Mm.
maybe they feel stuck or they just, things aren't going the way they want them to, regardless of the amount or in spite of the amount. What patterns have you noticed in individuals like that?
Yeah, I feel like they have a giant hole in their Titanic normally. So they built
Yeah.
this entire like this ship, right? And you're like, hey, like I if I make more money, I'm invincible. And what ends up happening is they're making, 200, $300,000 per year, and then they find that they're not keeping a lot of it. They look back to previous years and say, okay, well, I made $300,000. Where's it at? Right.
Mhm.
And it's because there's a lot of different factors, right? So you have to kind of look at the bigger expenses that you pay throughout your life. And, people always avoid the conversation of taxes, but that's a big deal. Like I think you're still in Dallas, right?
Austin.
Austin, even better. So you're in Austin, so you don't have a state income tax, but you do have a really high property tax. You have to weigh up, like, am I cool with that? I was just
Mhm.
talking to someone who lives in New York. I won't say his name, but he works for a major financial firm and he makes $350,000 per year. And he
Mhm.
just bought a $1.1 million home, right? So on paper, it looks great. You're making the money, you have the house. Like, I'm sure it's beautiful. Maybe it's smaller because it's in New York, so you probably got a closet. But all that being said, a lot of money is leaking out of his pocket. And, we were talking, and he came up to me after our conversation, and he was like, "Hey, I'm not saving anything. I'm not investing anything. And we need to connect and figure out how I can go about investing more of that money." So I guess where I'm going here is that, people they make a lot of money, but if
Mhm.
you are not thinking about those top expenses, let it be taxes, the place that you live, food is a big one, like DoorDash, and I'm not talking just groceries, like DoorDash, Uber Eats. A lot of people have a lot of money flowing out, your car. All those are big factors in how much money you have left over that you're then able to hopefully invest. So if you don't have control over those and you're not even looking at how much money is flowing out, then you're in for a pretty big problem because what happens is you make the money, you pay the bills, and then people forget about the variable expenses, like the ones
Right.
that you don't actually have to pay for, the Ubers, the DoorDash, dining out. What else? Like clothes, shoes, donations, like those are big. Like I talk to people all the time who are tithing, 10 to 20%, but they're not putting any money away for themselves. And I'm like, by all means, do what you want to do. I love God as well, but like you have to make sure that you're also putting money away. Because
Right.
not to get spiritual here, but it's one of the things that is mentioned in the Bible is that like God loves a willing gifter, not I need to make sure that I'm giving 10% every single month. Like that is a common misconception. So
Right.
and that's something that now that I'm in the South, I talk to a lot of people about. Um, so all that being said, it's making sure that you don't have that leaking faucet. Make sure you don't have that hole in your Titanic, and make sure that you're looking at every single dollar you spend so you can optimize it and give every George Washington a job. Because if you don't do that, then sure, you're gonna probably look back and say, "Hey, like I have $350,000 I made last year, but I don't know where it's at."
Totally. And I think, people have this misconception that the more they make, the easier things get. And I
Hmm.
feel like it's the opposite, right? Because the more you make, the easier it is to spend, and therefore the easier it is for things to slip through the cracks. And,
Right.
you wake up after a year of making such a great salary thinking, what, what the heck? I have nothing to show
Yeah.
for this.
Yeah, exactly. I mention this often to people, and sometimes I get like a raised eyebrow, but I felt like it was easier to manage $20 per week, and I've lived that life before. I've been poor before,
Mhm.
and I thought it was easier to manage that than to manage $100,000 per year. Because with $100,000, you think you're rich, especially if you came from an upbringing where no one made that kind of money. My parents
Mhm.
made like $50,000 collectively throughout their like at the height of their career. So, and I'm not saying that, I want to go back to that. I'm just saying that it's easier to manage because, like, if you lose $2, you're like, all right, now I only have $18 for the week in order to eat, right? But if you
Right.
have $100,000, it's like I could do whatever I want. And then
Right.
next thing you know, that money's gone. Then you use credit cards, and then you're kind of digging yourself into a bigger financial hole.
Totally agree. And I see that even with clients. Sometimes I have a subset of clients who, we're just cash everything, like no
Yeah.
credit, nothing like that. And, they tell me like, wow, just managing the cash like really forces me to stay in check. Like I can't spend money I don't have if I have no access to credit. Like I really have to make this work. And
Yeah.
I know it's tough. It has its own set of things that go with that, but it really teaches you the importance of managing what you have. So when you do have more, you know what to do with it and you understand the importance of managing it well.
Yeah, I tell my students every time, like, I'm a big fan of the envelope system. Like, if
Mhm.
you know that, you have to get a haircut every month or every other month, or you're getting your nails done, or you're getting whatever it is, petty, medi, whatever it might be, you want to make sure you're giving that money in cash if the place takes cash. Because,
Right.
again, yeah, to your point, if you spend that money and you are now trying to go back and get your hair done, now you have to pull from somewhere else in order to pay for it. So I'm a big fan of that. And when I was paying off my debt, single best thing that I ever did was making sure that I had cash for everything.
Yeah.
Going out to eat, whatever it is. I was that weirdo getting the change back, and I just had a big old barrel of pennies and quarters and nickels and dimes. And my friends thought it was weird, but then when I paid off all my debt, they were asking me how I went about doing it. So I would say embrace the weird. If you could use cash, do it. I know it's not cool with the Gen Zers out there to use cash, but it definitely keeps you in check because you can't.
Absolutely.
You like once you run out, you're out.
Exactly. I mean, that's the beauty of it. When you're done, you're done. So you
Yeah.
got to use it wisely.
Yeah.
Um, but this leads me into a conversation I want to have about, financial freedom being more behavior versus income, right? I think, it's easy for people to think financial freedom means just making a lot of money, but
Yeah.
in reality, your behavior plays a huge role in that. So, I would love to hear your thoughts on, how behavior really factors into a person being financially free. Obviously, we've talked about spending, but there could be a level of mindset or just maybe the way you go about thinking about how you donate or give, like we were talking about earlier. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so anytime that I'm working with anyone, a lot of times they think I'm going to come in and start talking about numbers. And I think numbers are a big factor, but I think what's even more important is behaviors and habits, right?
Mhm.
Especially if they're coming in, they're saying, "Hey, like, I'm in, above 5 figures of debt, and they're trying to pay off their debt, they're trying to invest." I go back to, and as much as I can build a plan on how you can go about paying off this debt, I need to understand how you got into debt in the first place. It's not a place of judgment. It's more of a place of what are your habits? What do you
Right.
like to do? Like, how can we make sure we're setting up systems to ensure that you're not going overboard, right? So I think habits are very, if you're really trying to change your financial life, instead of trying to focus on money accumulation and making more money, focus on, hey, what are my current habits that are keeping me from reaching those goals? It's the
Yeah.
same way with anything else, right? So I'm on this fake fitness journey where I'm like, hey, I want to make sure that I'm in the best optimal health as I'm getting into my later 30s and in the 40s. So I signed up for things like High Rocks, and which is crazy. Don't even look it up if you don't know what it is. It's absolutely insane. Don't do it. Not recommended. I did sign up for another one, so it tells you a lot about how crazy I am. And then I do things like Barry. So I love like hit training. And why I'm saying that is because you have to, if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to work out, you're trying to increase, or make your blood pressure go down, whatever it is, you have to focus on what those individual habits are. What does your day to day look like? If you're trying to cut 15 pounds, as much as you can go and run a marathon and think that's going to work, it comes down to your eating habits. Like, how are you eating? How are you working out? Are you getting enough water? Like, are you doing micro workouts, like going for a walk every single day? You really have to think about what those habits are. And then your change, the delta comes from you like going and doing those habits every single day.
Mhm.
And the same goes along with money, right? I think a lot of times people want to be better financially, but they don't want to change their habits.
Right.
And if you're not changing your habits, that's literally the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
And this is not coming from someone who's like a trust fund kid or like really just never made any financial mistakes. It took me almost 3 years of like beating my head against the wall and saying, okay, like, how can I change? How can I make sure that I'm not going into debt? How can I make sure I'm investing? How can I do all the things that I know I need to be doing? But then I said, Mark, you've been doing the same thing over the last 3 years. No wonder you aren't reaching your financial goals. And as soon as I got to the point where I started making those, I had some hard conversations with family. Like, I think especially if you're the first one to make it from your family, quote unquote, make it out. You have people that are asking you for money, right? That's a
Mhm.
behavior. That's a habit. I talk to people all the time. They're basically the ATM for their family. And by
Yeah.
all means, like if you want to be there for your family, go and do it, right? A lot of them probably helped you to get to the position that you're at. But if you find yourself giving more money to them than you're giving to yourself, number one, or number two, it's hurting you financially, you really have to check yourself and check them and have those conversations. So that's another big habit that I think leads to people not reaching their true financial um, you know, true financial freedom and making sure that you're doing the best for yourself. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different factors, a lot of different habits and behaviors that could be a detriment to your financial freedom. So you really have to check, how is that money leaving? How is the money coming in? How is it leaving? And is it leaving and aligning to what my goals are? 'Cause I
Right.
think I tell people all the time, like the people who spend a lot of on DoorDash and Uber Eats, I was like, if you look at your vision board from 2026, I'm pretty sure you didn't have Uber Eats on there, but you're spending more on Uber Eats than you are putting money away for your future. So you have to really check what you're doing and are the dollars being assigned to goals that you truly have,
Yeah.
or is it just leaking out of your pocket and then you go into the next year wondering what happened to it?
I think you shared so many good points and perspectives there too that really stuck out to me. The first one is, where is your money going? Like, this is where, as basic as it sounds, a budget is so instrumental because
Mm.
you know what should be happening, right? And when you know what
Yep.
should be happening, you can enforce it and make sure it happens. But that's such a wake-up call if you are giving to your family or spending on Uber Eats or whatever it looks like. If you're not monitoring that and tracking that with a budget, it's very easy for more to go than you expect.
Yep.
Um, Another thing was, you mentioned like having hard conversations. I think in order for a person to get to that place, they almost have to have that mindset shift themselves, right? Like
Yeah.
you have to kind of take a step back and really look at your situation and say, okay, like you did, Mark, like for 3 years, you're doing the same thing over and over until you really sat with it and thought like, okay, I have to do something different. I think that mindset shift is almost first for
Yeah.
everybody because if you don't
Yeah.
start thinking differently, you're not going to start acting differently.
That is so true. Yeah, you hit it right on the head. It's again with anything in life, if you continue to do the same habits over and over again, you can't expect a different result.
Right.
And I mean, sometimes, and I tell my students all the time, like if you're going through and you're looking at your finances for the first time and you're trying to look at how much money is coming in and how much money is going out, and you look at the money that's going out and you don't cry, you're not doing it right.
Right.
You're not doing it right, especially if
Right.
you're making a bunch of money or living paycheck to paycheck.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that I want everyone to, be crying and like shedding tear all over the place, but you should feel some type of way
Right.
after you go through all that. And I still remember to this day, 2017, I was looking at my numbers when I was in Philly and I was sitting on the bench and I was like on my laptop. And I remember I'm just like, oh, I'm spending $900 just going out. on the weekends per month. And I was like, and I'm sending money to my parent or to my mom at the time, and then my sisters. And I'm like, where's all this money? Where's it coming from? And I realized I was spending money from like credit cards,
Uh-huh.
and I remember crying and. Just literally, I shed like a thug tear, and I was just like, I'm from Philly, so we don't cry. Um, Cowboy fans, maybe something different. I knew I was going to throw it in there somewhere. I knew I was going to throw it
Oh,
in there somewhere.
don't get us off topic now.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, I remember, shedding a tear, and it was less of, hey, I'm overspending. It was more of, am I really going down the path that all the people I said didn't want to be like? Am I going down that same path of too much debt, spending money on things that I don't really care about? And I worked hard to get to that position. I think a lot of people are listening. You got into your position because you worked your tail off,
Mhm.
right? And I put myself through college. I mean, I got into Vanguard, and I was around a bunch of people who were private equity kids. I was very much not that.
Hmm.
I was just a kid from the projects, and I was really thinking through, all right, I need to change. What am I going to do to change? And when you have that heart to heart with yourself, most people avoid it their entire lives.
Yes.
That's when things start to change.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. I unfortunately had that kind of experience or wake up call at a very young age. I was
Yeah.
living in LA and trying to do it on my own, and I was not doing the right things, and I almost got evicted. My
Mm.
mom had co-signed, and they called her. It was truly a nightmare, and
Yeah.
it was I was very young, but it was that first kind of click for me that
Mhm.
I'm not going down the path I really want to be on. How do I take a step back and do things differently? So if you
Yeah.
can, anyone who's listening can have that epiphany as early as possible, you'll do your future self a big favor.
Yeah, I call it like the fetal
Yeah,
position moment where you're literally just in the corner rocking back and forth, and you're just like, what am I going to do?
right.
Right. And
Mhm.
again, a lot of people, I talk to people who are in their 60s or 70s, and they're just like, I never had that until now, but I'm happy I
Mm,
have it because it's
yes,
not only going to help me survive throughout, my remaining years, but also make sure my kids, my
yes.
grandchildren are set up. But the earlier that you can have that and you check yourself, that's the moment where the earlier you're able to do it, the better.
Yeah.
So if you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s, make it happen. Think through what your finances are currently, and think about what truly makes you happy and what it's going to take to actually get there.
Totally agree. So I want to shift the conversation a little bit. The last time you were on the show, we talked a lot about investing and getting started with investing.
Mhm.
Now I kind of want to connect the dots. How does investing actually connect to financial freedom? And in your opinion, I mean, how important is it for a person to achieve the things they want in life?
Yeah, so I think the transformation that I feel like I made and a lot of my students have made over the last, couple years has been that you feel like you're what did someone say the other day at a conference? Like you're not lit forever, right? Like you're not full of energy forever.
Right.
In your 20s and maybe your early 30s, you just have the energy. You're like, oh my God, I'm so passionate about this. I want to become a CEO. I want to go and make all this money. I want to do. And then I feel like it's like your mid 30s where like life starts to creep in and you're just like,
Mhm.
I don't know if I want to do all that. And I don't want to make money actively anymore. And like, I'm tired. Like, my buddy, my best friend, his birthday was yesterday. And he woke up and his back was just like hurting. And I'm just like, bro, like I said, happy birthday. He was like, bro, I can't walk. He's fine. But it just goes to show you that like life and, aging, it takes over. And you want to figure out a way to not make just active income. And I
Yeah.
think passively, the way you make passive income is through investing is one of the easiest ways of going about doing it. And if you avoid that, you will get to the point where you're 60 or 70 years old and you'll continue to have to work because you didn't do anything to make sure your money's money is making money, right? So there's no other way of retiring unless you have a pension or you invest it for yourself. So I think it's really critical to just make sure that you're focusing on not only active income but also passive income. And then not just investing just to invest. Make sure that the accounts match what your financial goals are. Because a lot of times people are like, oh, like, what should I invest? What kind of account should I have? And I'm like, what are your goals? Is your goal to retire early? Cool. Use a brokerage account in order to put money away so you don't have to worry about turning 59 and a half and actually be able to use it. If
Mhm.
you just want to retire at 60, cool. 401k, 403b, IRA. If you want to invest for your kids, I mentioned already 529 for education, right? So like think about what those specific goals are, match the accounts to those goals and start putting money away. And initially, when you're investing, it might not seem like you're putting too much in. I still remember when I was putting in like $20 per month just to get the habit
Mhm.
started. And after some time, that starts to build. It's like a snowball going down the mountain. It starts to build. And now I'm looking back and I'm like, who am I? Like where did this come from? I don't I have this imposter syndrome where I'm like, why am I privileged enough to get to the point where I'm making sometimes, 5 figures in a day? And it started because when I was 22 and I started investing, I
Mhm.
was just focusing on the habits, $20, then like $50, $100 per month, and started incrementally going from there. And then you start to see the portfolio grow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it becomes really important to not only focus on active income, but over time, you start to realize that you don't have enough time or not time, not enough energy to be active. And the thing that requires the least amount of energy is passive income. And you have to focus on how can you invest for your goals for not only you, but also for your family.
I think that's, I mean, again, so many good points you made there. I think one that really stuck out to me was, especially early on or for anyone who's just getting started, like don't even focus on the amount. Focus on building that habit,
Yeah.
focus on the consistency because the good thing about investing is, your money grows on top of itself. So the more you do it, even if it seems small, like the bigger your earnings will be.
Right.
Um, so on that note, do you have any guidance for someone who maybe wants to start investing, but struggles with the consistency aspect because maybe they're feeling overwhelmed? I mean, they have a budget, they don't have much to contribute.
Mhm.
What would you tell them? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the big secret to wealth building is taking the human factor out of it, i.e., take yourself out.
Hmm.
Because as soon as you start thinking through, okay, do I have enough? Can I really put this money away? Is the market doing good today? Like, is the market
Yeah.
down? Like, what did the president say today? Whatever it is, right? Once you start adding in that human factor, then it significantly takes away from your wealth generation. So I tell people all the time, automate, automate, automate. Everything in your financial life, try to automate as much as possible. And don't, set it to, investing $100 per month if you really can't afford it. But
Mhm.
really think through, okay, like can I afford $10 a month? Can I afford $20 a month? Can I afford $30 a month? And then from there, set up automatic transfers going
Mhm.
into your investing account. So Fidelity, Vanguard, they all have these features where they're willingly or they're taking money out of your account and you can automatically invest it. It happens for me every single Friday. Like I wish today was Friday. I would show you like through the transaction, but normally around 10 p.m. or I'm sorry, 10 a.m. Eastern, I get a notification say like I already bought, the ETFs that I buy, every week. And
Mhm.
that allows me to get the human factor out of it. Because even I, as someone who was a stockbroker and financial advisor, and I feel like I know a lot as it relates to investing, if
Mhm.
I had to do that manually, I'm going to be like, okay, how is the market doing today? Is it down? Is it up? Like, what's
Yeah.
going on with the oil, situation in Iran? Like all this stuff, right? But if you take yourself out of it, it works. And it's not only for investing, it's also saving too. So I use Ally and actually today I could probably show you the confirmation. Money was transferred from my bank account into Ally in order to save for things like I want new pots and pans, but I'm not going to go and just swipe the credit card. I want to make sure I'm earning that money over time. But yeah, I think automation is a big, big factor that people overlook.
Mhm.
And then just be real with yourself and say, how much can I actually do? Another one I'll add in is automatic increases to your 401k contributions.
Mhm.
So people sleep on that, but like that single-handedly can help people generate hundreds of thousands of dollars by the time that you turn 60.
Yeah.
So every major firm that your company is probably using for a 401k, 403b, TSP, whatever it is, they have a feature called automatic increase. So you don't have to do 5% per year, but you can basically set it to like 1 or 2% per year. You're not going to feel it. Chances are you're probably going to get a raise anyhow that's
Mhm.
equal to that amount. Hopefully you are, because if not, then your money's not keeping up with inflation. That's a completely different conversation. But turning that on, that one click of a button is going to help you generate more and more money over the long term. To your point about compound interest, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I didn't believe in
Yeah.
it initially. I was just like, there's no way. But when you start seeing your money's money make money, it completely changes your life. It's kind of like planting a tree. The tree is then growing branches, and then your branches are growing branches, and
Yeah.
that's how the tree gets bigger. Like, and then you look out and you're like, that's not the same tree that I planted. I don't think. Why is it so big? Right?
Right.
That's exactly what happens to your investing accounts, but it's harder to describe, but it's beautiful when you see it after some
Yeah.
time. So I would say the big key is just trying to automate everything within
Yeah.
reason.
I
Yep.
think I mean, that's such a great way you might have that initial setup, right? Like where you actually look at your budget, see what you can afford to automate. But like
Mhm.
once you do it, it's done,
It's
right? And
done.
maybe just make a note every year to review it and take it from there. But
Right.
that's a great way to like take the overwhelm out of the entire process, if you will.
Right. Exactly. It's like you're already setting up auto drafts for the things like Netflix and
Mhm.
whatever other subscription you have. And a lot of times you don't, I mean, for better or for worse, you don't really think about it. And
Right.
it just happens. Like I'm still, now that I think about it, I haven't really received like a transaction from Netflix in a while, but I know they're getting their money, right?
You
I
would
just
know
used
if
it
they
the other day.
weren't.
Right. Exactly. Right. And it's like if you're already doing for that, and especially if you have kids, like you have Disney Plus, there's other subscriptions that you probably have. Why not set up a subscription for yourself
Yes,
and thus making money on the money that you're giving yourself instead of the money you're giving to the man, right? So
totally.
you
Yeah,
have to think through that and reverse engineer how you think about that entire process.
agreed. Okay, sort of a hot take question, but do
Ooh.
you think it's possible for someone to reach financial freedom without investing?
It would be really tough to do so, and
Mhm.
I would ask the question, what do you define as being financial freedom?
Mm,
Right? Because if you're saying, hey, like I'm not going to invest, but I'm going to live in Bali and just be a beach bum for the rest of my life, and I'm just going to have a very low expenses, like I'm just going to just work some simple job for the rest of my life, then maybe you don't need to invest. But the unfortunate thing about being in the United States of America, the country we all love, is that you have to make a decent amount of money because things are expensive. Like housing prices are expensive, having a kid is expensive, let alone childcare, right?
Right.
So it's a lot of times the current money that you're making, let it be you or a spouse or whoever is, you're, combining income with, it's still hard to do so.
Yeah.
So then it's like, how can I make more money without demanding more of my time? And until there's reform on housing or all the other things that are not so great about this country, you have to invest in order to not only take care of yourself into the future, but you're also making money now. Like sometimes people don't even think about the fact that you can invest and take the money out now and use it for your current life expenses. Like I
Hmm.
have a whole brokerage account that I have set up. So when I'm putting money away, I'm like, okay, that's going to pay for my next south of France trip.
Hmm.
So if I want to go to south of France, I basically just take out, six to $10,000, buy the flight, buy hotels, go out there, have a great time, come back, and I don't feel like I, went into debt.
Right.
So and that requires me to do that, but it doesn't require me to take money from my salary in order to pay for it. So you have to really think through all that. So to your question, can you reach financial freedom without investing? I think you can if you're not spending that
Mhm.
much, but if you live in the United States, unless you live under a bridge, you have to invest in order to take care of your lifestyle expenses, let it be now or in the future.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it would be very, very hard to achieve the life you want without it.
Hmm.
And one thing I know is lumped in what you described about healthcare, right? Like you might
Yes.
feel like you're the healthiest person right now, but with our current healthcare system, in the future, that could cost you a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Healthcare, long-term healthcare.
yes.
I mean, other things that need reform, investing for, I'm sorry, college education is a huge one.
Yes.
Housing reform. Like there's so many things that I don't know within our lifetime they're going to be able to fix.
Right.
And because of that, we have to, unfortunately, put money away to make sure that we can pay for those things. Because there's nothing worse than student loan debt, nothing worse than having a bill from the hospital that you can't afford to pay off. And
Right.
there's nothing worse than we were talking about evictions. There's nothing worse than being evicted from your home because you can't afford it. So it's like, how can we make sure that we have that active income coming in, make sure it's reasonable, but then also make sure that we have a safety net just in case.
Yes.
And that's through investing.
And as we've discussed in this episode, you can get started right now and it doesn't have to be a lot. It just has to be consistent. So,
Right. You can
anyway,
literally start investing today, like
yes,
literally right now with $1. Setting up a Fidelity or Vanguard account will take you less time than it took you to open up the Instagram account that you probably have because you follow both you and I. So like
exactly.
it's really important that that you get started. And if I were to learn anything in my journey of adulthood and reaching a level of success, it's the people who are willing to just do that thing they need to do, and you
Mhm.
don't continue to kick the can down the road 10, 15, 20 years and look
Right.
back and say, okay, well, what did I do? Why did I not do it years ago?
Right.
So especially when it comes to investing, normally when people come to me and they say, hey, like, and I ask them, as it relates to investing and managing your finances, like, are there any regrets? And the number one regret is not starting earlier. It's
Yeah.
never, oh, I can't believe I invested. It was like, I wish I would have started 10, 20, 15 years earlier. I would be in a much better financial position. But again, going back to what I said before, like people believe that they're lit forever. They believe
Right.
that they have the energy forever. And at a certain point, I think about I feel like I was 18 not too long ago, and now I'm 36. And I'm like, where did the time go?
Mhm.
And that time goes very, very fast. Ask anyone, ask your grandparents, your mother, your dad. The time goes fast, so make sure that you're investing while you have time to do so.
Agreed. Mark, I feel like there were so many good points made in this episode. So thank you so much for coming back to the show.
No
Before we
problem.
wrap, where can listeners connect with you?
Yeah, all things BetterWallet. So Instagram is my main channel. I'm also on TikTok, trying to be on TikTok. Also trying to be on YouTube, Facebook, right? All things BetterWallet. So BETTER wallet. And my rule, I don't know if I brought up this rule the last time, but my rule, if you follow and it's from a podcast or it's from some sort of interview, I want you to send me a DM. Send me a DM. I answer all my DMs. I'm still that crazy person that still does that. But in all seriousness, I love connecting with like new people, learning about your journey. What do you worry about? What are your concerns? Like, what's your goals? And let's talk about it. I really want to help out and making sure that you're reaching your true level of financial freedom. So my grandmother always says, don't enter someone's house and not say hi to the person who owns it. So if you follow, make sure you reach out and I'll get back to you if you shoot me a DM.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mark.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me on.